They kicked me out with a suitcase and called my dreams foolish 3 weeks later. I was a millionaire with the power to vanish and rebuild everything on my terms. This isn't just a lottery win. This is revenge crafted in gold, silence, and success. It started with a knock on the door, not the kind that signals an unexpected guest or a neighbor with a package, but the kind that's heavy with intention, weighted down with finality. Kaitlyn Anderson looked up from her workbench, a tiny lamp casting a warm glow over her tools and half-finished pieces of jewelry. She had been crafting a necklace, her fingers smudged with silver polish and gemstone dust. The knock interrupted the delicate rhythm she'd spent all day falling into. Her mother stood in the doorway, arms folded, lips tight. Kaitlyn's father lingered behind her, silent but stern. "We need to talk," her mother said, the 3 words, more chilling than the November wind howling outside. In the hour that followed, Kaitlyn's life unraveled with surgical precision. Her parents, who had once cheered at her high school graduation and co-signed her first lease, now declared her a disappointment. They called her jewelry business a childish fantasy, accused her of wasting time and resources, and demanded she find a real job or move out. It wasn't the first argument about her career, but it was the last. And just like that, Kaitlyn found herself in the driveway with one suitcase, a box of supplies, and the echo of a slammed door reverberating in her ears. The storm hit just as she stepped off the porch. Rain drenched her within seconds. Lightning cut across the sky in jagged streaks, like the path her life had suddenly taken. She had no plan, no backup, and almost no money. Her phone buzzed with a low battery warning as she pulled up motel listings. She found the Pinewood Motel a few miles away. A cheap roadside stop with flickering neon signage and a front desk manned by an elderly couple who didn't ask questions. Room 7 had a rattling heater, threadbare curtains, and a bed that groaned under the weight of her disappointment. But she was safe. For now. The next few days were a blur of vending machine coffee, job search websites, and scribbled lists in her journal. Kaitlyn sold 2 of her handmade bracelets online through a tiny Etsy shop she hadn't updated in months. Just enough for groceries and another night at the motel. She started to rebuild quietly. Jewelry supplies were laid out on a desk by the window. Notes scrawled in a spiral notebook with ideas for marketing, branding, maybe even a new collection. She kept to herself, but Rebecca, the owner, noticed the way Kaitlyn worked late into the night, the glow of her desk lamp spilling through the blinds. One evening, after overhearing a tense phone call between Rebecca and her husband about missed mortgage payments, Kaitlyn offered a bracelet as thanks for letting her stay past checkout time. Rebecca took it gently, tears in her eyes. "You're talented, sweetheart. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise." That night, as thunder rolled in again, Kaitlyn pulled out her grandmother's old lottery book. Margaret had played the same set of numbers for years. Kaitlyn hadn't played in ages, but the numbers felt like comfort, like a whispered memory, a connection to someone who had believed in her when no one else had. She bought 1 ticket using Grandma Margaret's numbers. The drawing was the next night. Kaitlyn didn't even remember to check the results until late the following morning. She was sipping burnt motel coffee, scrolling through emails, when the Powerball alert caught her eye. She opened the app, her thumb hovering over the check ticket button. 5 seconds later, she dropped the phone. She scrambled to retrieve it, heart racing. The numbers on her ticket, the exact sequence from Grandma's book, matched the winning numbers. Every single one. Her hands trembled as she called the lottery commission. "This is the state lottery office. How may I help you?" I think I won," she stammered. "But I need to make sure it's not a mistake." The woman on the phone verified her ticket, confirmed it. "Ms. Anderson," she said, voice turning reverent, "you are holding the winning ticket for last night's Powerball drawing. Congratulations." Kaitlyn couldn't breathe. The walls spun. "Are you all right, ma'am?" I don't know," she whispered. The woman on the line walked her through the next steps. Sign the ticket, get legal counsel, stay quiet, and protect herself. Kaitlyn scribbled notes with shaking hands. The call ended, and she sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone. $30-7 million. $37 million. Rebecca knocked on the door 20 minutes later, concerned by the wild laughter she'd heard. Kaitlyn opened the door, face flushed, eyes wide. "I won," she whispered. "The lottery, all of it." Rebecca blinked, unsure if it was a joke or a breakdown. Kaitlyn pulled her inside. "You can't tell anyone," she said. "Please, not yet." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Whatever you need, sweetheart. Your secret's safe with me." Kaitlyn booked every room in the motel for a week to ensure her privacy. She asked Rebecca about lawyers. Rebecca gave her the name of her cousin James, a financial advisor in the city. Kaitlyn spent the next 24 hours planning and signing the back of that ticket. The universe had just handed her the keys to a life she'd been denied, and for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. The air inside the motel room had shifted. It wasn't just the stale scent of last night's rain or the faint buzz of a flickering fluorescent bulb overhead. It was something in Kaitlyn herself. The numbness from the shock of being kicked out had given way to a buzzing urgency. There was so much to do, and so little time before the world might discover her secret. She followed the lottery official's instructions to the letter. The back of the ticket was signed. The paper was sealed in a waterproof pouch and hidden beneath the mattress. Her phone's browser history was scrubbed. She created a fresh email account using a pseudonym. Then she began a spreadsheet labeled, Next Steps. Hire a lawyer. Hire a financial advisor. Set up a blind trust. Avoid the media. Figure out the future. The weight of $37 million pressed down on her, in the strangest way, not like a burden, but like a crown she wasn't sure she'd earned yet. Rebecca knocked again, this time with breakfast. Kaitlyn opened the door in a clean shirt she'd picked up from the motel's laundry closet. Rebecca's doing. She handed her a bag with coffee, toast, and 2 scrambled eggs. You all right, sugar? Kaitlyn gave a slow nod, still processing. I called James, Rebecca said gently. He said he could meet you at 2 p.m. in his office downtown. Said he'll close the whole building for privacy. Tell him yes. And thank you. Rebecca squeezed her shoulder. Don't forget, honey, this is your second chance. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for taking it. James Spencer's office was as understated as it was elegant. Warm wood paneling, minimalist art, and a sense of absolute confidentiality. Kaitlyn sat on a leather couch, knees bouncing. James, a man in his early 50s with gray temples and an aura of competence, offered a calming smile. Miss Anderson. Or would you prefer another name for now? Kaitlyn is fine. I just don't want my family to know? Not yet, understood. Over the next 2 hours, he walked her through the options. Lump sum versus annuity. State tax implications. The need for a trust, and asset protection strategies. You've got something rare, James said, pausing thoughtfully. Not just the money, the anonymity. Most people don't get the luxury of making decisions before the world finds out. She left the meeting with a binder of documents, a thumb drive full of encrypted files, and a dizzying sense of control. She called Rebecca from the sidewalk. I want to rent all 15 rooms for 2 weeks, anonymously. You got it, Kate. She returned to the motel and slipped an envelope into Rebecca's office. 10 crisp $100 bills. For emergencies, she wrote. And quiet. Kaitlyn's new apartment was on the 10th floor of a downtown building with a doorman who didn't ask questions. James had arranged everything. The first night she spent there, she lay on a mattress with no sheets and stared at the ceiling. It wasn't the luxury that calmed her, it was the silence. No arguing voices. No demands. Just her takeout and ate on the floor. The taste of freedom was greasy, salty, and perfect. The next morning, she took a cab across town to the bank and opened her first account under the Blind Trust's name. From there, she shopped new clothes, furniture, and a laptop, but nothing flashy. She wasn't trying to make a statement. She was trying to build a life. She ordered a jewelry-making kit online. Not the kind she used to scrape together from thrift store beads and clearance bin wires, but a professional-grade workstation. Arrived in discreet packaging. 2 days later, the first real test came. A week later, Kaitlyn, dressed in jeans and a soft blue cardigan, walked into Carlton's Coffee to grab her usual chai latte. She'd become a quiet regular, her routine building a new kind of comfort. Kaitlyn, she froze. The voice belonged to her older brother, Timothy. He wore a blazer, khakis, and a look of genuine surprise. I've been calling you, he said cautiously. I changed my number. He glanced at her outfit, then at the iPhone in her hand, and the smart leather purse. You look ... good. Good I am. Where are you living? I've got a place. And your jewelry thing, it's coming together. He lowered his voice. Mom's worried. She cried for 2 days. Dad's acting like it didn't happen. You should come home. Kaitlyn took a deep breath. I don't need to come home. I made a home. Did something happen? He asked. You just changed. Life happened, she said softly. And I'm finally living it the way I want. That night, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. From Dad. "We're proud of you. Let's talk." From Mom. "Please come home, sweetheart, we miss you." She didn't reply. Instead, she poured her energy into her work. Using high-quality stones, she crafted 6 necklaces in honor of Grandma Margaret's favorite themes: ocean, forest, stars, time, silence, and fire. She called the line Margaret's Legacy. Each piece told a story. James helped her register the business, set up an online storefront, and hire a freelance graphic designer. Within days of launch, her Instagram had hundreds of followers. One post went viral when a lifestyle blogger featured her sapphire and silver choker. Then came the email from someone named Chloe Rivera Jr., producer from a daytime talk show. She'd seen Kaitlyn's story on a local art blog and wanted her for a segment. Kaitlyn declined. But she saved the email. A month passed. Thanksgiving loomed. Kaitlyn rented a small gallery space for a pop-up exhibit. Her parents had reached out again. Timothy, ever the peacemaker, offered to bring them to a private dinner. She agreed. They met at her apartment. Now tastefully decorated, calm, and elegant. Mom brought an apple pie. Dad arrived with a wine bottle and the awkward stiffness of a man unsure how to apologize. "I've seen your website," Dad said. "It's impressive." "I didn't need your approval," Kaitlyn replied. "But I appreciate the interest." They ate. They laughed awkwardly. Kaitlyn didn't bring up the money. But she saw the way their eyes darted to her ring, her watch, the quality of the food. After dinner, Kaitlyn took her mother's hand. "You may never understand why I needed to go. But I hope someday you'll respect that I did." Mom nodded, eyes glassy. "I'm trying." 3 months later, Kaitlyn launched her foundation, a grant program for young creatives like her. She awarded the first grant to a girl named Leela, a 17-year-old sculptor living in a shelter. Leela cried when she got the news. That night, Kaitlyn stood in her apartment, looking out at the city lights. She touched the sapphire pendant around her neck. She didn't feel rich. She felt right, and that was worth everything. Kaitlyn stood at the large window of her downtown apartment, sunlight bathing the marble countertops and the sleek hardwood floors in gold. It had been nearly 4 months since her world had flipped overnight, but each morning still felt a bit surreal. The lottery ticket now lived in a shadow box frame on her studio's wall, laminated and protected like a sacred artifact, not because she needed proof of her wealth or thriving jewelry business, and her buzzing bank account provided that, but as a reminder of what could grow from rejection. That day marked the soft launch of Margaret's Legacy's first physical storefront. No longer just a website and Instagram page, Kaitlyn had signed the lease on a quaint space in a stylish part of downtown. Exposed brick, tall windows, vintage chandeliers she had hand-picked from estate sales. The front sign bore the brand name in delicate cursive, beneath which read, "Jewelry with Soul, from stories worth telling." She arrived early, unlocking the glass doors to let in the scent of fresh paint and lavender polish. Her assistants, Nia and Jordan, arrived shortly after, carrying coffee and nervous energy. "You ready for this?" Nia asked, setting down her tote. "As ready as I'll ever be." Kaitlyn smiled. They worked through the morning, arranging displays, double-checking inventory, lighting candles, and cueing a playlist Kaitlyn had spent 2 weeks perfecting. By noon, the shop quietly opened its doors. No grand launch, no PR spectacle, just a gentle welcome to anyone who wandered in. And people came. A trickle at first, then steady foot traffic. Curious neighbors, Instagram followers, even to journalists who'd seen the viral choker post weeks earlier. One of them asked for a quote, but Kaitlyn smiled and deflected. The pieces speak for themselves. That evening, Kaitlyn returned to her apartment to find a letter slid under her door. Thick ivory paper. Her name handwritten in elegant script. Kaitlyn Anderson. "You are cordially invited to the Inner Circle Gala, a night for visionaries." It was an exclusive fundraiser gala attended by philanthropists, artists, investors, and media moguls. Kaitlyn blinked, stunned. Someone had noticed her foundation and work. She flipped the envelope over. There was no sender listed. But someone had pulled strings to get her on that list. The night of the gala, Kaitlyn wore a midnight blue velvet gown she had designed herself and paired it with the ocean memory necklace, lapis lazuli stones that shimmered like tide pools. Michael, who had become a steady presence in her life over the last month, accompanied her in a sharp black suit. "You look like royalty," he whispered as they stepped out of the car. "I feel like I stole the crown," Kaitlyn murmured, half joking. Inside, crystal chandeliers glowed, champagne flowed, And for once, Kaitlyn didn't feel like she was pretending to belong. She did belong. Over canapes and soft jazz, she spoke with a renowned sculptor who offered to collaborate, an investor offered to fund expansion, and a celebrity gushed over her Starfall collection, asking if she did custom work. By the end of the evening, Kaitlyn had been approached by a dozen influential figures. She smiled graciously, took cards, but remained grounded. Her moment had come, but she wasn't chasing fame. She was building a legacy. Weeks later, as Kaitlyn's business and foundation thrived, she began thinking about giving back in ways even her own family would never see coming. Her parents had once dismissed her dream, kicked her out into a storm, and left her with nothing. But she wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Not the petty kind. Instead, she called James, her financial advisor. "I want to set up something anonymous," she said. A week later, an envelope arrived at her parents' home. Inside was a paid deed of trust, her parents' mortgage, settled in full. No signature. No return address. Just a note: some debts are worth paying even when the ledger says otherwise. When Kaitlyn's mother called, her voice trembled. "Was it you?" she asked. Kaitlyn hesitated. What would it mean if it were? It would mean, "We were wrong, and you are so much more than we ever saw." "I always was," Kaitlyn said. "You just didn't believe it yet." They didn't speak again for several weeks, and Kaitlyn was okay with that. Some bridges take time to rebuild. Michael moved in by the end of the spring. Her studio expanded. Margaret's legacy made the cover of Modern Artisan. Kaitlyn was invited to speak at a design symposium, and her speech ended in a standing ovation. Then came the first young artist from her foundation to break into the national scene. A painter from rural Georgia named Amira sold a piece to a Hollywood director. When she tearfully thanked Kaitlyn on social media, the post went viral. Kaitlyn's inbox exploded, but she wasn't chasing attention, she was chasing purpose. That summer, Kaitlyn held a family dinner again, this time in her gallery. Her parents, Timothy and Lisa, his now fiancé, gathered around a long wooden table, lit by fairy lights and surrounded by her latest collection, Reclamation. Each piece symbolized rising from pain, choosing love over bitterness, and becoming who you were always meant to be. Her father stood before dessert, lifting a glass to Kaitlyn for teaching us that the most valuable thing in the world isn't wealth, it's knowing your worth. This time, Kaitlyn believed him. She touched her pendant, a new design she hadn't yet named, but she knew what it represented: forgiveness and freedom. The gallery buzzed with quiet conversation, the soft clinking of glasses, and murmurs of appreciation, filling the room as Kaitlyn moved through her second grand exhibition. The collection was called the Phoenix Line, each piece a metaphor for transformation, survival, and rebirth. It had been 1 year and 3 months since Kaitlyn scratched a lottery ticket in a dingy motel room, uncertain of where she'd sleep the next night. Now, she was headlining one of the most anticipated design showcases in the city. Critics and collectors had flown in from New York and Paris, eager to see the rising artisan everyone was talking about. Her name wasn't just on the jewelry tags, now it was in the press, on business cards, on invitations to events she once could only dream of attending. And yet, despite all the success, Kaitlyn remained grounded. She greeted guests personally, introduced her assistants proudly, and made a point to highlight the stories behind each creation. When a well-known fashion editor asked about her sudden rise, Kaitlyn smiled and said, "I wasn't discovered, I simply stopped hiding." Later that evening, after the final guest left and the lights dimmed, Kaitlyn stood in the center of the gallery, her heels echoing on the polished floor. Michael walked up behind her, slipping an arm around her waist. "You didn't just survive," he whispered. "You soared." The next morning brought something unexpected: a letter. Not an email, not a message, an actual handwritten letter in a familiar script. It was from her father. "Dear Kaitlyn, I've been thinking about your journey a lot. About that night we turned you away, and how that one moment of failure on our part became the foundation for everything you've built. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully make it right, but I do know that I see you now, not just as our daughter, but as a woman of incredible strength. Thank you for not letting our short-sightedness define your limits. Love, Dad." Kaitlyn read the letter 3 times, her fingers trembling. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was more than she ever expected. Autumn brought new challenges and new beginnings. Kaitlyn expanded her foundation, launching a mentorship program for teenage girls interested in creative entrepreneurship. She began hosting workshops at schools and community centers, always starting her story not with the lottery win, but with the moment she was forced to choose herself over anyone else's expectations. Rebecca and Donald visited one weekend, now glowing with pride as they shared news of the Pinewood Artist Retreat. "We've had musicians, painters, even a playwright stay with us," Rebecca beamed. "You changed our lives. You saved mine first," Kaitlyn reminded her. Near the end of the year, Kaitlyn received an invitation she never expected, a keynote speaker request from her alma mater's entrepreneurship program. The same school her parents had once begged her to abandon her jewelry dreams for something more stable. She almost said no, but something in her heart pushed her to accept. The auditorium was packed when Kaitlyn took the stage. She didn't use slides or flashy visuals. She simply told her story, from rejection to reinvention. "When I was 24, my parents told me I was chasing fantasies, that my jewelry business was a hobby. They thought they were helping, but what they didn't understand was that belief is fuel, and the absence of it, that's fire, too, just a different kind. What you build with it is up to you." A standing ovation followed. Several students approached her afterward, teary-eyed, thanking her for giving them hope. As she walked out into the crisp evening air, Kaitlyn knew she had done what Grandma Margaret always said she would. She had carved a life that was hers alone. On the second anniversary of her win, Kaitlyn hosted a private evening in the gallery for friends, family, and the foundation's mentor. The final reveal was a sculpture, a cascading structure made from repurposed metals, wire, and gemstones. It shimmered in soft light, complex and imperfect. "I call it the fall and rise," she said to the gathered crowd. "Because sometimes, it takes losing everything to discover exactly who you are." Timothy raised his glass. "To Kaitlyn, the best investment this family never made." Laughter, cheers, even her parents clapped, smiling with something genuine this time, not pride in her wealth, but admiration for her truth. As the night wound down, Kaitlyn stepped into her studio, lit only by the reflection of the city through the glass wall. She looked over her tools, the framed ticket, and the sketches for her next line. A notification pinged on her phone. A message from a girl in Ohio. "I watched your talk. I've been scared to apply to art school, but I just did. Thank you," Kaitlyn replied with a heart and a message. "Create loudly. You already belong." She smiled to herself, turning off the lights and locking the studio. She didn't need luck anymore. She had a legacy.